After crawlers started taking over to-go beer packaging, it was only a matter of time before someone started making a version of a can seamer that is more achievable for the home brewing community. About a year ago, Oktober Designs started producing a homebrew version of their can seamers, and it started to become a reality on the homebrew scene. Today, I have Dennis Grumm, CEO of Oktober Design, and he is going to talk to us about all things home canning today on Homebrewing DIY. Building recipes and taking good notes are two of the key fundamentals of making great beer. This is one of the first things that you learn when becoming a new brewer. I started taking notes on a sheet from my extract kit and then quickly moved to brewing software. I've tried many different types of brewing software, and then I found Brewfather. This is the one piece of software that you need for recipes and very detailed brew day notes, as well as fermentation notes. Brewfather also integrates with some of the topics that we discuss on this show, like the till hydrometer, the ice spindle, and ferment track. You need no other piece of software than Brewfather. One of the best parts of Brewfather is that you can try it for free. All you need to do is head to our website, hombrewingdiy.beer, and click on the Brewfather banner to sign up for free today. Once again, that's hombrewingdiy.beer and sign up for Brewfather today. Have you ever wanted to make a podcast? Do you have a subject you want to discuss with listeners? Do you even know where to start? Well, if you want to make a podcast and you want to get started now, I could not recommend Anchor enough. Anchor is the easiest way to make a podcast. Anchor gives you everything you need in one place for free, which you can use right from your phone or computer. Creation tools allow you to record and edit your podcast so it sounds great. They'll distribute your podcast for you so it can be heard everywhere: Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and many more. And you can easily make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. Hey, look, I shopped around for a place to post my podcast, and Anchor was the easiest, most streamlined experience you could ask for. So if you're looking for a place for your new podcast, download the Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. Once again, download the Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. And welcome back to Homebrewing DIY, the show that takes on the do-it-yourself aspect of homebrewing. Gadgets, contraptions, and parts, this podcast covers it all. On today's show, we're going to talk to Dennis Grumm, the CEO of Oktober Design, about how you can start canning your homebrew. But first, I want to talk about our Homebrew Hack Show. We have a ton of submissions, and we may not get to them all. I'm going to have Evan Sherlock, president of the Old Town Mash Paddlers, join me for the last show of the year to help read and discuss all of your different hacks. The deadline to get them in was December 10th. Evan and I will read between the two of us, and we will get some of the best hacks, and we're going to send you a Homebrewing DIY logo sticker. Make sure you listen to the last show of 2019 and see if we read your homebrew hack on the air. Now I want to thank all of our supporters on Patreon. You are the group of people that keeps this show alive and on the air. If you like this show, coming to you every week for free, you can directly support this show by going to patreon.com/homebrewingdiy and give it any level. If you give at the smallest level of $1 a month, you can get access to our Patreon RSS feed and get early access and ad-free access to the show. We'll also send you a thank you note and a Homebrewing DIY sticker. We're only having the RSS feed access available for the first 20 patrons at the $1 level, so head over to patreon.com/homebrewingdiy and sign up today. This is the best deal on ad-free access for a short limited time. Once we hit 20, you'll have to give it a $5 a month level to get the ad-free access. Another way to support the show is go to hombrewingdiy.beer and do your shopping at Adventures in Homebrewing, or sign up for our sponsor, Brewfather. If you use those links, it will support us, and it will also have zero difference in the cost to you. If you have a holiday gift for yourself or for another homebrewer, you can get them there and support the show. If money's not the way you want to support us, you can always write us a review. You can head over to Apple Podcasts, Podchaser.com, or Stitcher and give us a 5-star review and let other homebrewers know that you love this show. If you've listened to our last show with Chip Walton of Chop and Brew, you may have heard me talking about my fermented hot sauce. Well, I just want to let the listeners know that I finished my batch and it turned out really tasty. It's so good, and it's got great heat, it tastes amazing, and it's got a good amount of acidity and some garlic flavor too. I found a recipe on Homebrewing Association's website, and I'm going to add a link to this show notes so that if you want to give hot sauce a try, you can. Okay, now we're done with announcements, so let's jump into today's show, and we're going to talk to Dennis Grumm, the CEO of Oktober Can Seamers, about canning your homebrew. I did have some issues with the audio on this show, and the internet was cutting in and out, so I tried to fix it as well as I could, but please bear with me. So let's get talking to Dennis Grumm on Homebrewing DIY. Hi, I'd like to welcome Dennis Grumm from Oktober Can Seamers. He's the CEO, and he joined us today on Homebrewing DIY. Welcome.
Wow, it's nice to be here.
Awesome. Well, I'd really like to thank you for joining us on today's show. And really, I think we should just jump right into some questions. I think the best place to start is going to be, why would you want a can versus bottle if you're a homebrewer?
Well, I think, we got started in this crazy project basically from hearing from friends and us doing the same of, having cleaning bottles being just the worst part of brewing. And so we decided, well, what if you could do cans? And, that was, basically how we got into this. So I would say cleaning bottles is number one thing. The cool factor is obviously, probably top of the list as well. The first time you fill a can and crack it open and drink it, it's just kind of this really cool feeling like, wow, I made it. I have a can of my own beer, right?
Yeah, it's kind of got that feel of like, hey, it's a packaging that feels finished. Does that make sense?
Yes, absolutely. It's just kind of, not that long ago, even craft breweries weren't putting their stuff in cans, so it kind of still has this like new, fresh feeling.
Yeah, totally. One question I would have is there any type of advantages to canning versus bottling other than cleaning when it comes to stability or anything like that?
Yep, I mean, light ingress is better with can. Not that a bottle, if you keep it in stored in the dark, that's okay too. But beyond that, just the light weight of cans, so you can take them anywhere. So you can take them to give a 6-pack to your buddy and not expect to have to get your bottles back. Yeah,
which is always nice. I feel like right now in my fridge, I have some bottles from a buddy, and of course he's like, I need my bottles back. And if he were to hand me a can, it would be like, hey, here you go, enjoy the beer, let me know what you think.
Exactly. Yep.
Yeah. So obviously I think most people who listen to the show, or at least some of us, have been to a brewery where they have maybe a canning line, and it's a pretty big project. What are some of the design challenges taking something that is on such a huge scale and scaling it down to a home brewing level?
Well, the main difference between our machine and a canning line is just the automation of it. So our machine does the exact same thing that the actual seamer does in a big canning line, but that's just such a small part of an actual canning line. The canning line itself has all these tracks and depalletizing systems, and the filler systems are all automated. And so that's where all the complication comes into canning with a canning line. And that's kind of where our design was, well, we only need the seamer part. And that's actually fairly simple. It's got to be really precise, so there's some design challenges there. But beyond that, you're just taking these two rollers and infeeding them into the top of the can to seal it. So that's where we kind of differed from all the other canning systems that were out there.
Okay, and so the seamers that you do are only the seamers. So if I were to be a home brewer and I were going to start canning, why don't you walk me through what the process is? For example, if I were to start from an empty can, an empty lid, your seamer, how do I fill it up? What does that process normally look like? And what are the steps?
Yep. So you start with an empty can. You want to sanitize that, dip it in a bucket of sanitizer, just like you would a bottle or anything else. You want to CO2 purge the can in most cases, unless you're maybe doing like you can can condition, which is kind of cool, where you put some priming sugar in there and carbonate it. But if you've already forced carbonate it, you want to spray a little CO2 into the can, and that'll give you a barrier between the oxygen outside of the can and the beer on the inside. Then you want to use a bottom fill tube or a beer gun. Also helps with the CO2 purge. So you bottom fill the can. Make sure that the fill level is basically to the top. When you put that cap on there, if you push a little beer out, that's all the better. The less headspace, the better. And then a big factor is just getting that cap on as fast as you can. As soon as you fill it, put the cap on there. And then also, don't take your time getting the can from where you filled it into the seamer to get sealed. And that's pretty much it.
Yeah. And that's pretty much it. And one of the things that, when it comes to your approach to designing that entire process, what was the big, I would say, what was the big challenge for you in the design process to kind of make it scale down to just the seamer?
So the biggest factor is, even though the machine itself is really simple, it's the precision involved in all those little moving parts that are connected with the roller and the parts that make the can spin. My background is in precision machine design, so that was kind of where this whole thing came up. It was a cool idea, and I just happened to have a set of skills that allowed me to design a machine to do those specific things. Beyond that, it's just making something that we can produce over and over and get the same results. So minimizing how many parts were in the machine and really chipping away at the design for a while and really coming up with something that's robust and simple, something that our machines are basically anybody can look at it and see how it works. And that was kind of a goal of ours. We didn't want it to be overly complicated.
Yeah, so the idea is that if I were to go down to a shop or buy it from you directly, when I purchase that seamer, I got it home, it's going to have very few instructions to kind of walk me through that process, right?
Yep, they come set up and ready to go, so they're calibrated out of the box. And most people can seal a can on their first try. There's a pretty simple set of instructions. We got some videos on our website that show you how to run it, but basically you're just lifting a handle which clamps the can in place, and then there's the operation handle that basically moves those little rollers in. There's a right side and a left side. Super simple to use.
Awesome. What are how do we get cans? I know that like if I look at your website, obviously we can buy cans from you, but is there a certain design of can that needs to be used with your seamer? Is it specific?
No, it's not. It's not specific. Pretty much all the manufacturers out there make their cans to the same set of specifications. So whether you're getting cans from Ball or Crown or RDOG or any of the manufacturers, they'll all work in our machines. It can be difficult to get cans in smaller quantities. That's why we sell them. But a lot of our customers will ask a local brewery if they got their friends with them or something like that, they can grab a couple layers off a pallet or anything like that. But wherever you get cans, our machine can be set up to use them.
Okay, so normally if I were a brewery, I would have to buy pallets of cans, and if I'm a home brewer, to buy like a couple hundred cans is probably pretty tough.
Yeah, I mean, that's why we sell them, and we try to keep our margin down on them just to get them out there. We know our customers need cans, so we ship them all over the country all the time.
That's awesome. And some of the feedback that I've personally seen online, and I got to be very clear, I've never personally canned. It's something I definitely want to do one day. But I, mainly just keg, and if I need to take something, I just grab a growler and go. But the idea is that one of the things that I've seen is that, yes, when you're canning, it can be a little messy. You can kind of get beer everywhere. What are some good tips and tricks that you've seen to have a good kind of canning process if you're going to do a whole batch?
To do a whole batch, probably one of the biggest tips is just to wear an apron. You're gonna get beer kind of around the area no matter what. So when we set our stuff up, we basically set it up. We have a stainless steel kitchen table that we set it up on, and you just kind of squeegee it off if you need to, and don't worry about getting messy for an hour while you're canning.
Yeah. Have you ever had people have any issues? Like, what are some of the common issues that people have with a canning system that you've seen in the wild, or why people can struggle with a canning system?
So the homebrewer seamers that we sell actually are even easier to deal with. The professional ones we sell, the main thing is just keeping them clean. When we sell one to a brewery, they're often using it behind the bar, so it's all the bartenders using it day in and day out. And most of our customers are awesome; they keep it super clean. But that's probably the main thing: is you want to just keep it wiped down. Don't use any caustic cleaners or anything. Water with a little sanitizer in it's all it needs. And then there's the shaft that lifts up the can itself, can be pulled out and put a little keg grease on it. But the homebrewer ones, that's the nice thing about working in this industry, is homebrewers take care of their stuff. That's kind of a main thing. If you don't take care of your equipment, you're not going to make good beer, and homebrewers respect that. So really, they've been super reliable. We don't really have many things go wrong with them. Just keep it clean is probably my number one thing to say.
And when I look at kind of the Oktober seamers, they look like pretty robust pieces of equipment. They look very sturdy. They're not plastic. These are what kind of construction do you use in building those seamers?
It's all machine steel and laser cut steel parts. So yeah, it's an industrial design. Like my background is in industrial precision machines, so I took everything that I learned from that and pretty much put it into this. We don't want a service department. We don't want to have to ship machines back and forth all the time and fix them. So we basically designed it from the beginning, knowing that this is a thing that's going to work for a long time, and any little things you got to do to adjust it or make happen, the end customer is going to be able to do it.
If you were to use like cheaper materials to construct it, like for example, if you were to put out like a plastic seamer, because it's such a precision piece of equipment, it wouldn't last very long because of the type of equipment it is, right?
Yeah, and the forces involved in sealing the can itself are actually really high. Even just clamping the can, so when you put the can in there and clamp it in place, that clamping force is about 110 pounds. So that can is actually taking an axle load of 110 pounds. So that force alone is pretty robust. And then the force involved in actually driving those seam rollers into the can is pretty high, hundreds of pounds. The motor on them is a quarter horsepower, and it needs a quarter horsepower to run, which is about as much as somebody pedaling a bike as hard as they can. So it's a piece of equipment that has to be really robust just because of the forces involved.
Wow, that actually really is kind of astonishing to me that it takes that much force to but in all reality, you're kind of bending a big hunk of metal to keep it in place permanently, right? Against the pressures of like multi atmospheres of CO2.
Yeah, you're pushing it together, and you're not just bending that thin aluminum. You're actually really crimping it down and pinching it into itself to get that seal to seal every time.
How long have you been personally homebrewing? What is that? It seems to me like you started out homebrewing and kind of worked your way into this. What's your background in brewing?
So I don't brew myself very much. I help a lot of my friends brew. I've always been that guy, which is how I got into this. I saw all my friends having a problem with cleaning bottles. Having said that, we have a bunch of guys that work here at the shop that are brewers, and we're getting a 10-gallon electric set up for our shop here. So we're going to be starting to brew some stuff in the next month or so.
That's awesome. And where are you guys located?
Grand Rapids, Michigan. We just moved here about 4 months ago. We were in Muskegon, which is on the coast before that.
That's awesome. And then Michigan has a great beer scene and obviously a great homebrew scene. what kind of when you guys get your 10-gallon system, what kind of beers are you guys going to make?
Oh man, the actually the first thing we ever made to can, we brewed a porter, and we ended up, so it was a great porter, and what we did was we took bourbon barrel staves and kind of little ones, about the size of a quarter maybe, and put them in every can, and canned it and aged it for a year. And I definitely want to get back to doing fun things like that. We're actually putting other things in the can. It's just kind of another cool reason to can and do it differently. But it imparted a ton of good bourbon barrel flavor. And after a year, it was super smooth and into that kind of thing.
That's awesome. And then, let's talk about, like, yes, we're talking about canning beer, but obviously you can can pretty much any carbonated beverage, right?
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So, I'm starting to see things like hard seltzer kits coming out. If you wanted to can hard seltzer, you can make your own White Claw. My wife would like that, not me so much. But,
every once in a while on a sunny day.
Yeah, exactly. It is only 100 calories and still 5% alcohol. I guess it does have that.
There you go. Yeah.
What's the future of Oktober look like? Are you obviously you guys are doing brewery seamers, you're doing you're doing homebrewing seamers. Is there, a place that you feel that what success looks like for you?
Well, right now I feel like, especially with the homebrewing seamer, we're just like kind of at the tip of the iceberg as far as getting, people to even know that you can your own homebrew. So I think we got a long way to go there as far as just, showing people the benefits of it, and just showing people how fun and cool it is to be able to can your own stuff. As far as like the craft brewing market goes, that's, that market's been really good for us, and definitely going to keep rolling with that. But we're starting to move more into other countries. So like South America is starting a pretty big craft brewing scene. Europe is already pretty big. Norway is one of our biggest customers. Everybody in Norway seems to be a home brewer, and like a hardcore home brewer at that. So trying to move out a little bit there, but in the US still, canning homebrew is still pretty fresh new thing. So we're kind of excited just to keep getting the word out.
Yeah, the global aspect of homebrewing is kind of mind blowing to me. Just from having a podcast, how much response I get from South America is really, it kind of blew me away once I started kind of putting myself out there. And I don't know if you listened to my last episode. If you're listening to this show for the first time, I actually did a really amazing interview with Chip from Chop and Brew on his trip to Norway, and it's pretty cool what's going on in Norway when it comes to the homebrew scene there. Obviously, Kveik, which is a cool yeast that's out right now, is really kind of taken even our homebrewing scene by storm, and it's really kind of driven from that culture where everybody's generally a homebrewer there, right?
Oh yeah, it's crazy there, and they seem to be really into just doing wild things, and there's no rules. They just want to make good, cool beer.
Yeah, exactly. When it comes to the kind of can seamers that you're doing in the brewery, obviously you're probably mainly doing, at least at the brewery level, it's probably mainly like crowlers and things like that, right?
But beyond the crawler thing, that's probably our biggest part of the market. But a ton of our customers are actually using our machines just for small production runs. We've got tons of customers that have put 100,000 cans through one at a time on our seamers. They'll use them for doing some cases. They'll bring to local beer stores. A lot of them will use it to make distribution samples. So they'll make little kits of distribution samples and take them to restaurants and see what they'd like to have on tap. But yeah, all kinds of different uses. We have customers that are using them for canning soap. We have a lot of the bigger guys will use our seamers to can a few cans to run tests. So they'll half fill a can and run it through their big canning line to make sure that the canning line catches it and kicks it out of the flow. So they're using all kinds of different industries. It's actually pretty crazy to look at who our customers are today.
Yeah, and the thing is though, even though at a homebrew level, when we look at your can sealers, they are a few $100s. They're at a homebrew level a significant investment, but I don't think overly priced. But when you get into the brewery space, where you're talking like a brewery sized or an industrial sized seamer that you do is a couple $1,000s in comparison to a canning line, which is could be in some cases hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Oh, yeah,
It's
easily,
actually
yep.
pretty inexpensive, right?
Yeah, and it gives them a chance to get started in canning. You can say, okay, do we want a can, or are we going to go down this distribution path? And is this a good thing for our business? And they have to decide, are we going to spend 2 years profit on it, or they can just buy one of our machines and stick their toes in the water and see if it's right for them and see if their customers respond to it.
Yeah, and then if canning takes off, great, you're going to go invest in a canning line, and then you still have the seamer for whatever use cases you need it. For example, like you just said, samples, right? So it still has use even if you get a canning line.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yep.
And then, I know that there's like in the canning industry, there's a lot of businesses out there like mobile canners. Do you feel like some breweries have gone with your can seamers versus mobile canning?
There's probably a little overlap, but I feel like that's the middle step. So we're doing, you can run 10, 12 cans per minute through our machines. A mobile canner will be more like 40 or 50. And they're going to, if you got, 5 or 6 barrels you want to can up, mobile canning is probably the best way to go. It's more of the convenience of having ours and the smaller volumes. Like if you want to do 40 cases, you can do it on ours all day long. So I think there's a middle ground, probably a little bit of overlap, but for the most part, we don't step on our toes. Those guys are doing a good job, and we kind of fill that next notch down role.
Yeah, so like I'm a nano brewery, I'm dipping my toes to see if canning works. Hey, it's taken off. I still don't have the money to do it. Let's do some mobile canning to do our full batches, and then save up some money to maybe get into a canning line later. It could be like that process,
exactly.
Right?
Yep.
That's awesome. And then, if you were to say, where, like new products or anything like that, are you continually designing new products? Is there new seamers in your future, or are you guys looking to do something else?
I mean, we're always paying attention to it. I would say right now the machines we're making are kind of cash cows. They're super reliable, and there's not really much that can go wrong with them. So I'm hesitant to make too many changes. But having said that, we've only had the homebrewer one out for a little over a year now. So always open to ideas and things like that. We're always looking at forums and looking at what people say about them. We'll probably come out with a splash guard for our homebrew brewing seamer pretty soon. That's just to keep everything a little bit cleaner. Our professional models have that, and it's been a pretty big hit, and I don't see why we couldn't put one on the homebrewer one as well.
Yeah, and then do you feel like you've had a homebrewer one out for a year? Do you feel like that the early adopters out there have really kind of given you good feedback of what works and what doesn't work for them?
Yeah, definitely. We've gotten lots of feedback. It's all super positive. How people are filling cans, there's a few videos out there now that our customers have made showing how to really CO2 purge and make sure you get the most CO2 in the can so that least amount of oxygen. The splash guard's been a thing that people have asked about for sure. Yeah, people just kind of we sell them, and most of the time we don't hear about them ever again. That's a good thing. People are putting beer in cans and must be working for them.
Yeah, totally. And I got to be honest, for me at the homebrew level, I personally didn't start seeing it till, about a year ago. And once I started seeing it, I was like, man, I totally want to do that. So definitely something that is in my future. For me, I'm kind of in that sweet spot where like, yes, I keg, but I would love to, make a few cans out of every batch that I do so that, kill the keg and I still have that can that I can just throw in the fridge later. Like that's at least my personal idea of the way I see it in my brew system. but on the other side of it is, I'm sure there's some people out there that probably do 100% canning of all their batches, right?
Oh, sure. I mean, it's like anything else. There's nothing, inherently wrong with bottles. There's definitely nothing wrong with kegging. It's just another, tool to add to your arsenal. And I would say it's a particularly cool one, and it's got a lot of benefits. I'll say nobody's ever bought one and said, man, this isn't for me. They get it. And all super stoked about it. And that's pretty much the bottom line.
That's awesome. Well, Dennis, I want to thank you for coming on my show. I feel like I have a lot more information about canning in general. Can you give me a bit of information about if I wanted to, I didn't know can seamers existed and I want to go check them out. Where can I go and see what you guys are doing?
Everything, all the information you need about our seamers is on our website, oktoberdesign.com. It's October with a K. There's a bunch of videos on there, the operation manuals on there. You can check us out on Instagram, Oktober Design, Facebook. We always put up videos on there too, pictures of what.
That's awesome. And so I all my listeners, I would say, obviously I'll put links to that in the show notes as well. So if you don't want to figure out how to spell it, and then you can head over there and check it out on their website and check out their can seamers, check out their videos. I think you'll be surprised that the process isn't as big as you think it is. It's actually seems like a pretty simple process, and really, I don't think much harder than bottling if you're going to try to bottle well. So.
The seamers are plug and play. So you can use them pretty much right out of the box.
That's awesome. Well, Dennis, thank you so much for coming on my show, and love to have you back sometime in the future. And thanks for coming on Homebrewing DIY.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been a pleasure.
I want to thank Dennis for taking the time to join us on today's show. You can head over to oktoberdesign.com and see the can seamers that they have created, and it's pretty cool stuff. Make sure you follow the show on social media. We're on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. All of our handles are using @homebrewing DIY, one word. Well, that's it for this week, and we'll see you next week on Homebrewing DIY.